Hi everybody, welcome to this episode of Just About Managing. Today we are here with John Lloyd, Lee Smith and myself, Chris Dingle. I hope you guys have all had a great week and everybody out there in listening land have also had a fantastic week. It's a bit chilly, but we are going to bring some sunshine to the podcast as well as talk about a topic that is close to my heart because I've got tons of these. And today's main topic is going to be around blind spots. Okay, so how to identify blind spots, what they mean, and practical tips and hints and things that we picked up along the way to kind of like try and deal with and kind of like manage our blind spots. And then in the second half today, what we're going to talk about is our favourite gadget or gadgets. So I'm sure there'll be more than one. The klaxon will be out. We will see. I don't know. But I'm predicting there'll be more than one gadget. But yeah, technically be one, but we shall see. We shall see. So I hope you guys are all well. All right. So I'm just going to kick straight off into blind spots this week. Right. This was like the topic I chucked onto our WhatsApp group last night. And as ever, we don't know what each other is going to say. We are not prepped. So this really could go anywhere.
Anywhere.
Yeah, really could go anywhere. I guess the first thing around blind spots is just, it's a bit yin and yang, right? You're never all of one thing or zero, like on something, right? So for me, blind spots is not just around things that are like development points or things you're not so good at. It's also realizing that your strengths are not always your best asset. Okay, so I'll just share some of the strengths, like when so I was looking back at some of the personality survey things that I've done, like Hogan, Development Index, that kind of stuff, Myers-Briggs, whatever it may be. And within that, there would always be, this guy is really passionate and enthusiastic and has got ideas and is curious and is like, tenacious and hardworking, all of which sound really good. But the yang of that is not so good, in terms of like trampling over people with my passion and not really listening and kind of being a bit flighty around like new ideas and new shiny toys or new shiny gadgets. And then, being focused and hardworking means I could definitely get frustrated. All right, so personally, for me, a lot of this is around, personal reflection and kind of like slowing down and like listening, right, and getting assistance. Much easier said than done, particularly for me, but definitely one of those areas where there's no single like easy way to like deal with this, but like you're never an island. And practical tip is really to like, as ever, be a bit vulnerable, cut yourself open, say you want to get better at stuff and kind of go from there.
Yeah, it's funny, Chris, you should, while you're talking, I was just reflecting, and I'm doing some work with the clients at the moment where I'm sort of working with the whole leadership team and putting some definition around roles and responsibilities and sort of bringing that back to job descriptions. And even this morning, I was having some conversations with some of the leaders in the business, and it's interesting because it's quite a rarity that you get to have that snapshot and have that kind of deep conversation about each individual's roles all in a compressed period. And you realize that those perspectives of capability and strengths and how those corporate roles intersect, there's an element within that which is, as always, there's always an element of personality, but there's also an element of blind spot in terms of how people perceive not only their role, but actually how they fulfill their role versus how their peers fulfill their roles as well. And it's a fascinating exercise, but it's even today sitting down having a conversation and I was listening and I thought, it's a really great opportunity to start to open some of those elements up in terms of, okay, right, how do you really start to switch this into high performance? But yeah, and being able to look at it in totality. So yeah, I wonder, sometimes I worry I'm bitten off more than I can chew with it. But actually, to your point, actually the you as an individual and how that sort of plums into your role, and actually whether it be around passion or drive or whatever, the further you get into a job as well, the more that almost like consumes you and becomes harder to unpick.
I think having that group like that, say, John, as well, do you find with having that sort of group together, are they then sharing with each other their understood roles and responsibilities? So is it like some of that vulnerability aspect again as well, and then opening up the...
So that the intention is that we do that, yes, right. But we're not at that stage yet. So yeah, I think that's going to be the challenge for me and my blind spots, because I've got to facilitate that session, which is is going to be challenging, but I'll love it at the same time. But again, I've got to almost like, rather than get completely consumed in it, be able to sit back and actually making sure I'm drawing everyone in during that session. So it's challenging me to think about that as we go through.
I think the bit for me, again, as you talk there, John, it's we never know where our blinds. Well, we never, I suppose, we've never understood all of our blind spots ever, have we? In a way, because they'll always come to us.
Yeah.
In different ways, if we're self-aware in there. And I think that when I was thinking about when you pinged it over last night, Chris, it was like, what are the key pieces for me in this? One of them was really interesting was doing this podcast. Because and I did this again through Balk actually when we did the coach training we did initially, is recording yourself and then watching yourself back and spotting potentially what other people see and what they don't see at times, but also that unnerving feeling of seeing yourself and thinking, oh shit, is that really how I sound? Is that really how I come across? Do I nod all the time like that? Really? Is that bad?
Oh yes.
That's why I've got a bad head all the time. But so that's been interesting actually, just that video perspective of actually seeing yourself almost how others see you. You mentioned it again a few weeks ago, John, with regard to what you see in the mirror is not necessarily what other people see. And I think that's very much the same with seeing recordings back. Now that's difficult, obviously, work environment. But those times when you do get opportunity to, I think that's quite a good self-reflective period to go, oh dear, right, I need to tweak some things here, or that's okay.
Yeah. No,
I
agree.
For sure. I think the whole self-reflection, literally now, you can get so much more rich intel. So, we've got to use that, all of us, right? And, those, no team or individual is ever a finished article, and the global economy and the way we all interact with each other is so completely different, and will continue to evolve, right? So I think, John, it's interesting hearing you talk about working with this in a team, because actually that's really I've mentioned it before, but releasing the power of the diversity within a team, the skills within a team, and actually together is so much stronger than working on stuff just in isolation. So it's quite interesting. I remember going to a speech thing that Stephen Bartlett did a couple of months ago. One of the things he was talking about there was habit stacking. So what are the good ways, and out of habit stacking, creating good habits. All right, so that's good. And then he went on to skill stacking, right, specifically. So not just how you create healthy habits for yourself, but how you look at the skills you've got and the skills you've got across a team. And actually, a good way to get better is to partner up with other people who are really good in a specific skill. So practical things that we can do, any of us, to work on blind spots that we're aware of, and to shield ourselves from any other blind spots, is to work with a diverse group of people who are not like us, right? So that's really the power of diversity, because then you've got more skills regardless of what the challenge is, whether it be on the DISC model with the 4 quadrants, trying to understand that you need some like visionary people, but you need people to get stuff done. Other people within the team who are great with the team, and other people who make sure that there's practical elements around like budget, numbers, planning. Right, they're all completely different skills, and if you can bring together a team that's got all of those things that can cover for your own blind spots and you can cover for theirs, that's really cool, actually. So that would be fascinating, John. Like to hear how you get on with that client, right? And how that goes. In terms of second, third session, because you'll be in the strength space and you'll be in the definition piece. But then also collectively, they can probably do more stuff as a group.
Yeah, and there's a desire to want to do that and drive change, which means that it's impactful. But it's interesting that a lot of that, being able to have that dialogue and to sort of chat, to receive that challenge on the blind spot, it kind of all links back to culture. And which is, as you know, is one of my kind of favourite kind of areas or comfort zones probably to look into. But when you start to consider, in some ways, I think the foundation part for it to work in terms of that challenge and interaction and feedback, there has to be that safe and collaborative culture in the first place, because otherwise, I think it grinds to a halt very quickly, and you almost got to say, okay, right, we need to address the cultural element before we can even get to, in some ways, the actual easier stuff. I think I'm so passionate. I believe that the cultural element is the harder piece to crack, and then you can start to get into those elements of actually being able to have those more open, collaborative conversations.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. That culture piece, like you said, John, set the foundation to have proper open conversations. And I think it's, again, you look at it and go, is that, do we as people and organisations invest in that enough in the cultural aspect versus what's perceived as sort of the quicker wins of just looking at high performance and driving people on? Whereas if you get the bed of culture right, I think that leads into everything else, both the open conversations. The other bit for me on this, and we talked about this a few weeks ago again, was regarding feedback. You mentioned it again there, John. I think the biggest impact I've seen from that self-awareness perspective, that blind spot piece, particularly Chris, is when you throw in there, if you're working as a coach or with a coach, is a 360 view. So with working with somebody, I say, if it is a coach, and that coach being able to reach out to stakeholders, to managers, to people who work for you, getting that anonymized sort of view, if you like, an honest view that potentially does highlight blind spots that you're not aware of at that point, and that you can then work in a safe environment. Back to your point again, John, work in a safe environment with an independent, again, whether that be a coach or not, but to then talk through, okay, what do I now want to do about these blind spots? How do I want to try and approach them? Do I want to leverage them more, or are they not strengths that I just want to continue being aware of, but not touching on in there to drive forward? So I think that 360 view is a great way, I think, of pulling out where blind spots are that you're not aware of.
Yeah, that makes sense, Lee. Right? That safe, supportive environment to actually then work on blind spots that have been identified or things you want to work on that's like really important. I think whenever we try and work on anything, well, certainly whenever I try and work on anything, just it can feel quite scary and a bit like lonely and isolating. It can feel more vulnerable because you're going to work on something that's a bit more tricky. Okay, and personally, I could kind of like give up. Might not like that kind of stuff. So I like to think about this a bit like what's the support model, the support team around me, particularly if I'm going to take anything on that's a bit tricky. And I was never any good at it. All right, but I remember chemistry at school. Okay, in chemistry at school, you'd have like Bunsen burner, which was always like brilliant. That was like lesson 1. best thing to be able to make fire, and it's actually at school, light the splint and kind of like off you go. Right, it was really good fun. And then you'd heat something up, right, and like a beaker of whatever on the top, and that support model, the mechanism that would, you'd be working on that would be bubbling away, there'd be a tripod there. So I think the support model, practical ways that we can like work on blind spot, is to get that support model, that support tripod, support team in place. So I think coaching is great because people can kind of create that safe space and work with you. But again, this is where mentors is like the second leg. Big brother, big sister, people inside, outside the organisation who you can be really kind of like a bit more maybe vulnerable with is really useful. And then also, I think the third leg is like your friends inside and outside work. So you can kind of like enjoy the journey and kind of like laugh at it, like when you're like working on this stuff. So practically, to get better at this stuff faster, having that tripod of support is like can help you get there faster if you want to work on this yourself amongst the broader skills of the team and the broader culture. So I think actually actively making it part of your, the way that you operate, to reach out and ask for support and to ask for people. And this doesn't have to be forever, right? I mean, the best mentors I've had have been some of them, you just kind of work with them on specific stuff for maybe 6 months or a year. Yeah, it doesn't have to be for a long period of time, but you want to buddy up with people who are awesome at the things you want to maybe get a bit better at. Yeah.
I think friends and family particularly. I think that I remember. I think I said this to you, Chris, when we did just an anecdote on that. When we did the recording for Infinity for the coaching piece, and we recorded that. And again, I looked at it back and thought, that's okay. I think that's okay. And I show my wife, and she's brilliant for spotting my blind spots and telling me where they are, and giving feedback. And I showed it to her, and she just said, "Yeah." And I was like, "Right, that doesn't sound positive." Yeah. And she went, "That was just boring and inauthentic." And I was like, "Blunt, but just what I needed to hear." And then we went back and obviously did it again. Chris came back to you, and you said, "Yeah, let's go again if you want to." But I think it's that. Hopefully that's a safe space at home. But getting that blunt and direct and honest feedback that does make you better. And hopefully that second one was better slightly. But again, the bits that you don't necessarily see yourself in there when you're looking back at yourself or you're listening to yourself, or you're being yourself in a meeting or anything at all.
Yeah, it was interesting, Lee, right? Because the first one of those recordings that we did, we kind of to kind of showcase, the coaching skills within Infinity, right? It was 8 minutes. You had 3 questions in there, but it didn't have the same flow. When you came back after you'd had your tough love, it's down to 4 minutes, right? But it was pinchy to the point. It sounded like you. It was really good. It's actually it's really, really valuable, that feedback, and less ego, more humble, just kind of take it and then do something with it. The only way to really build confidence and kind of work on stuff is to take action and to genuinely embrace the learnings from it. Yeah. But it's good. Now, whenever I post anything through Infinity on Team, post the thing about Lee, everybody loves it. It's amazing. Yeah, so anyone who needs skills on how to do videos, Marie Smith, consultancy fees there, Lee.
Just be ready for honest feedback.
Yeah. My last, I guess, final thoughts on this subject. And again, it's reflection. So I've been doing some work recently, not just with the managers and leaders in some of the business I work with, and I think irrespective of our age in life and level of work experience, we all have blind spots, and whether that be around challenging the way something's done, or being more of the what if, or challenging yourself to go out of your career comfort zone and look further forward in terms of what you do now, the value that's going to give you in 10, 15 years' time. It in some ways, actually, I think so often when we talk about blind spots and we look at them, it's when people become managers, leaders, etc. And the reality is it's bloody hard to change at that point because people have become dyed in the wool, more ingrained in the working practices, etc. So my kind of mantra is very much we should be starting to encourage having conversations around those right at the start of our careers and with our staff that work for us at the start of their careers, and not just avoid that because it's not necessarily so much a problem then. If you, in my view, if you're a true manager and a leader, you should be looking to solve for that now, because actually long term those junior members of your team will prosper significantly more and won't have had all the hard lessons that I've had about my own blind spots because I should have looked at them later on from a career perspective. So yes, there you go. That was my reflection thinking about this today. And obviously a lot of what we talk about is management and leadership, but actually it's far more foundational than that, and it can be solved far earlier as well.
Yeah, it makes good sense. All right. So, gang, brilliant discussion. All right. So that just about wraps up the first part of the podcast. So stick around, everybody, for part 2, where we're going to talk about favourite gadgets. And then maybe gadgets. We will find out. See you in a bit. Okay, welcome back to the second part of our podcast today, and we're going to talk about our favourite gadget or gadgets, whatever that may be, for any of us.
Do you know what, Chris? When you pinged this over last night, or the 2 questions, obviously the one about the feedback or the one about the blind spot, and then gadgets. Blind spots got me thinking, and the first thing that came about was the 360 piece. Gadgets, I was thinking, oh God, what do I pick out? Because I wouldn't say I'm always buying gadgets, but I'm always looking at gadgets. Not useful ones, so they're not the best gadgets at all. And true to form, I won't just mention one, but I will only dig into one. So I was thinking about different gadgets for work, different gadgets for health, for life and things. Now, the 2 I'll mention very, very briefly from a health perspective.
So there's going to be at least 3.
I think it's a scope creep because he's now got 2 for health. And it sounds like there's a work one coming as well, Chris.
All right, we better stop and get out of the way. So, John, I'll see you in 10 minutes. All right,
yeah,
go on,
okay.
Go off and get a drink and I'll crack on. So the two ones that I'll say right at the start of lockdown, I made 2 investments that I have literally sort of not transformed my life, but made a big impact. One was buying a watt bike. So an indoor exercise bike or a watt bike that was absolutely brilliant from a physical health perspective. And despite having played football in my past, I'm probably fitter now than I've been since my late 20s, I'd say, in there. So that's been one investment. An infrared sauna, which sounds like a big investment, but it wasn't. It wasn't expensive. And that has made a huge difference health-wise. As you can see, my hair's growing back as a result of that. I know it's not. That's had an impact on my blood pressure. Bringing my blood pressure.
Really?
Yeah. So that's dropped it about 20 points from about I was mid 140s, so virgin and high, and I'm down to mid 120s now, and that's predominantly through the infrared sauna.
How does that work then, Lee?
It's literally it's not. Like I say, it's the one I've got looks like a bit like a coffin. So it's like a single person sauna with a glass door on the front. Yeah. And then it's got these carbon panels down the sides and back that give off infrared heat. You'd have to come and try it.
It sounds like a microwave and you get in.
I'm not getting in it with you, though.
It'd be a tight squeeze, John.
Yeah.
It'd be a tight squeeze. But it heats up quickly, and then it's not like a traditional sauna, so it's not steam and heat. It heats from the inside, so it's a bit like a microwave, basically. So I'm just cooking from the inside out at the moment. But you only stay in it for like 15, 20 minutes. It doesn't have to be hot for you. You stay in it 15, 20 minutes. Been in it sort of twice a week. And look at me. Look at me.
Dear.
Blimey.
So they're the health ones. They're the health ones that I was just going to touch quickly. The one work one, and this is courtesy of a certain Mr. Lloyd, actually. But this has transformed me from a work perspective in the coaching I'm doing at the moment, and the work I'm doing, is that you can see on screen if you're on video watching this, is the Remarkable. Remarkable 2. Good job.
John's marketing there. How many shares you got in that, John?
I think he got commission on mine. And it's basically a digital notepad. And so it's just a notebook that I can take all my notes on, physically write on them. So it physically saves your notes that you're handwritten. Nobody else can read them because they can't read my writing. But from a coaching perspective, it's been absolutely brilliant just to make notes after sessions, be able to refer back to them and not trying to scramble through a physical book. So that's been a real game-changing investment for me. It wouldn't have changed anything for the last 25 years in the corporate world.
No.
But from this perspective, where we are now, it's been absolutely massive. It really has. So sorry, there's my 3.
No, so that's cool, right? So, but useful, and there's only like one electronic gadgety thing there, Lee.
There is.
Yeah.
So go out and buy a sauna, guys.
Yeah. I'll just add to the Remarkable. The great thing about it as well is that, as well as having it on your tablets, you can bring it up on your screen. So I was doing some work yesterday, and I was typing on Word, and on the left-hand side of the screen, the right-hand side, I had my written notes, and so actually you're referring across, and it's again, it's just really quick and efficient in terms of being able to use it, and the battery lasts a long time, unlike an iPad. Yeah,
I think for me, this sounds like a Remarkable advert now, doesn't it? But it's the actual writing experience. It's like writing on paper. It's not like an iPad or anything where you're writing, it's slidey and your hand hits it and everything. It is like writing on paper. So no, it's been a proper game changer.
How much is that then, Lee?
They're not cheap, are they, John? It was
a couple of £100. Yeah,
a couple of hundred, and then they charge you for the extras, for the case and the pen and things. But between 200 and 300, I think it was, wasn't
it? Yeah. But I would agree. I think that's been doing this job being one of the best investments I've made. I won't talk about that because obviously it's you've stolen that one from me.
John.
So
Sorry.
Yeah. Most of my gadgets recently have been, so I think the sometimes you just get absolute satisfaction in life, and they can be from very sad places, as in people laugh at you. So obviously we've moved into this house here over the last few months, and whilst we were doing the renovation, I ran a load of Cat6 network cabling to various places in the house and out to some of the outbuildings, and then we've recently just had all solar and stuff installed. And earlier last week, my son, after running all those cabling, I was paranoid none of it was going to work, and I had to crimp all the cable ends, and I bought this tool which is called a pull-through connector crimper. And no word of a lie, when my son and I tested all the connections, every single one worked first time. And for a £21 tool, it's amazing how much joy that can sadly bring when you realise you've actually achieved something. But yeah, small things make me happy sometimes. But that's probably my strangest recent gadget, and non-tech related. And then my other one, from doing a lot of the work in this house here, was an airless paint spray gun to spray the ceilings and the walls.
Ooh.
I saw you with that when you sent me some photos of when you were doing the house, John. It was like, I think I need one of them. I don't need to do any painting, but I need one of them.
Easy to use then, John?
It is. It's all about anything in life. It's all about technique. And you've got to be, so as soon as you start pulling the trigger, you've got to be moving. You can't stand still, otherwise it just goes all over the wall. And yeah, it takes probably a tenth of the time painting a room, but the actual preparation in masking up takes an inordinate amount of time. So yeah, there you go. But yeah, and then I'm seeing I'm going to do a Lee. I think I couldn't be the only gadget that I couldn't be without is my iPhone, and that's a boring and simple one. Everyone knows about it, but it's recently I lost my mobile phone number because my previous iPhone fell in the bath whilst I was watching YouTube. I know, silly idea to do that, but you realise how these things have become the core of our lives and how invaluable it is. So, yes, there you go. I bore you to death with some rather strange ones there, Chris, but I'll hand over to you.
They're all very good, and if ever need to do some painting, I need to look up John's paint gun or Lee's microwave.
I'll send it over to you, don't worry.
Oh, that sounds good. Gadget-wise for me, when we were outside of the UK, one of the things we missed on like big occasions, like anything that would happen in related to the UK, was, to be frank, was being able to watch stuff on the BBC. Yeah, I mean, it's just world renowned for like the independence around news and that kind of stuff. And we got this box, and it enabled us to be able, as a family, on key occasions, to watch British TV from anywhere around the world. And actually, that was really, really important to us, to feel part of our country, right? Because our boys were away. We left when they were like 4 and they were 2, so they were really small. But when we watched like the opening of the Olympics, we could watch that on like the British version. And then I remember we were in Dubai, and at that time Harry and Meghan were actually quite popular. So there was Harry and Meghan's wedding, and we had a party at our house, and everybody we knew came to our house to watch it. And part of it was because it was going to be the BBC, and we all liked it red, white and blue and all that kind of stuff, and it was really, really good. So my favourite all-time kind of gadget, more from the experience perspective, like what it means, as simple as it is, was the ability to watch British TV overseas. It was just amazing. Yeah, it really was quite transformational for us, and got really good memories around it.
Did you buy that gadget off Dave in the pub car park as well, Chris? Or was that?
No, it's amazing what you can just buy off the internet, isn't it? And then just pay a subscription for like £10 a month or whatever, $10, and plug it in and you're off. But yeah, that was really, really cool. Really, really good. And it's different now, right? Because like Netflix was in its infancy then, and other stuff, right? So, but you'd have to like get recordings of DVDs, a bit like going around to like John's video guy. But John in KL, I think actually, John, we went to a John in KL to buy the new bought DVDs, like when I was over there, didn't we? Speaking of like one of those things from the previous weeks, if you don't know what that is, that's in a previous episode. Listeners, maybe episode 5 or 4 or 5. Cool. Well, I'm going to keep the high ground and stick to one. Because it was gadgets.
Chris.
Yeah, terrible.
There must be another one that you're desperate to get out there. There must be, just to make us feel better.
Definitely not. Look at me on the high ground. Brilliant. All right. Really good. Really good. Okay, so guys, thank you very much for bringing some colour to my afternoon here down in Grey Kent today. And to everybody out there, we hope you've enjoyed this episode of Just About Managing. Please remember to follow the podcast wherever you listen to us, whether it be Apple, whether it be Spotify, wherever it may be. He's been John Lloyd. He's been Lee Smith. I've been Chris Dingle, and you've been listening to Just About Managing. Goodbye.